Psalm 53 study continued. What would God want us to do today? Based on the themes of Psalm 53 and broader biblical teachings, God would likely want his people to respond in several key ways. Acknowledge the problem and our own part in it. The Psalm's indictment is not just against an external fool, but against all humanity, including those who claim to believe in God. First step is to humbly acknowledge that corruption, greed, and the denial of God's authority are not just out there in the government and corporation, but can also be in our own hearts and lives. We're all fools in need of salvation. Live a countercultural life. If the world is characterized by vile actions and a lack of goodness, as the psalm states, then those who follow God are called to be different. This means living with integrity, rejecting the pursuit of money at the expense of others' lives, and actively pursuing justice, mercy, and goodness. Proclaim the truth. The psalm says the fool says in his heart there is no God. Yeah, stays in his heart too. The faithful are called to speak the truth about God's existence, his authority, and his desire for a just and righteous world. This is not about winning political arguments, but about sharing the gospel, the good news of a God who redeems the broken and brings hope to the hopeless. But you still need to win the political arguments. Gotta remember, it's the government's in charge, and God has an ultimate authority. Makes me question. Pray for our leaders in our nation. Apostle Paul in 1 Timothy 2:1-2 instructs Christians to pray for the kings and all those in authority, that we may live peacefully and in quiet lives of godliness and holiness. It's a call to pray for God's wisdom and guidance in our leaders, even if we disagree with him. The goal of this prayer is not to necessarily see our preferred policies enacted, but to create an environment where the gospel can be preached freely, an environment of fairness and equality. Everyone knows what's right. They can feel it in their heart. They're wearing chains that don't exist, basically. I don't see guys in chains. I see you in fear, but we already talked about that's the biggest way Satan controls people. And if you want to respect a government that's using oppression through fear in your life to control you, then I think you're way off base by accepting their authority. You could argue if you want. You don't have to believe me. The fate of the righteous in times of oppression and suffering are part of the Christian life. The Bible, particularly in the New Testament, is clear that following Christ may lead to persecution and suffering, but all that call on his name will be saved. No, they won't. Jesus himself said, if they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. Oh, well, it's only them. Why would I care? The idea that believers will be treated better or go free while the guilty pay is not a universal promise. In fact, it's backwards in the United States. It's somewhere in the Bible says, if you don't punish the guilty, you're punishing the innocent. Throughout history, Christians have been among the most oppressed and martyred groups. See, Christ does not save you. The nature of slavery. Life as a slave in ancient times, like Psalm 53's context, was brutal. Slaves had no personal rights, could be bought and sold, and often faced harsh labor and violence. However, some could also hold positions of trust and skill. The experience was varied, but the core reality was the loss of freedom and identity. In a modern sense, this bondage can be seen not just as a physical change, but as a spiritual and moral oppression, the loss of freedom to live in accordance with one's faith and conscience. Can we change our government? The Bible offers a complex view on this. On one hand, it calls for obedience to governing authorities, Romans 13:1-7, like to know what year it was written. And was it before the Jewish rebellion? On the other hand, it shows examples of faithful people resisting unjust laws when they conflict with God's commands. Daniel 6, Acts 5:29. The government's falling. Why does the government think they will be untouched by their behavior? It's directly addressed in Psalm 53. The fool lives as if God doesn't exist. They believe they are the ultimate authority and not accountable to anyone. The psalmist assures us this is a delusion. God sees their actions and will ultimately judge them, scattering their bones and putting them to shame. And probably chains too. See how he usually does it? The power of prayer. Can prayer change the direction of a nation? Biblical history says it can. Moses' intercession, Exodus 32. After the Israelites worshipped the golden calf, God was ready to destroy them. Moses interceded on their behalf, and God relented. This is a power example how a single person's prayer can avert disaster. Ezekiel's prayer when the Assyrian army surrounded Jerusalem and threatened to destroy it. Ezekiel prayed for deliverance. In response, God sent an angel who struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers. 2 Kings 19. Historical examples. The Battle of Dunkirk during World War II. As British forces were trapped in Dunkirk, King George VI called for a national day of prayer. The prayer was followed by a series of events, a calm sea and an unexpected fog that allowed for the miraculous evacuation of over 300,000 soldiers. Fall of communism. Many historians and theologians point to the prayer movements in Eastern Europe, particularly in Poland and East Germany, as a key factor that led to the peaceful collapse of communist regime. That'll end this section. We'll be back with the next section. You know it's taken 2 hours to upload a 5 to 10 minute video on YouTube. Used to only take 5 to 10 minutes. They must really love these studies, but that's too bad. I'll be right back. And so will he.